The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual mixture of languages, pheromones, and electromagnetic frequencies that constituted civilized discourse among the 17 major spacefaring races. At the center of the vast crystalline amphitheater, Ambassador Zeeks-9 of the Hegemony Coalition adjusted his translation matrix and prepared to deliver what he considered to be nothing more than a formality. Esteemed delegates. His mechanical voice resonated through the chamber. We gather today to discuss the application of the species known as humans for membership in our coalition. As per standard protocol, we have reviewed their technological capabilities, cultural achievements, and military potential. A ripple of what could charitably be called amusement passed through the assembled representatives. The Vrexian delegate, a towering insectoid creature with iridescent carapace, clicked his mandibles in the equivalent of laughter. Military potential? Have you seen their weapons, Zeeks-9? They still use projectiles that rely on chemical propulsion. Chemical propulsion. My larvae play with more sophisticated toys. The Aquarian representative, speaking through her translation bubble, added her own dismissive commentary. Their largest warships barely qualify as system patrol boats, by our standards. 1,200 meters at maximum length, powered by primitive fusion reactors, our scout vessels are twice that size. Zeeks-9 nodded, his optical sensors flickering with data readouts. Indeed, their kinetic weapons technology appears to have stagnated for centuries, while we have mastered plasma projection, quantum disruptors, and reality manipulation fields. They continue to fire small metal projectiles at subsonic velocities. Their military doctrine seems almost quaint. In the observation gallery, Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Diplomatic Corps sat rigidly, her jaw clenched as she listened to the casual dismissal of her species' capabilities. Beside her, Admiral Marcus Rodriguez maintained his poker face, though his knuckles were white where they gripped his ceremonial cap. They don't understand, Rodriguez whispered, barely audible even to Chen. They think bigger automatically means better. Let them think that. Chen replied, her voice equally low. Sometimes underestimation is its own kind of weapon. The discussion continued below. Delegate Thornax of the Crystalline Empire, his silicon-based form refracting the chamber's ambient light into prismatic patterns, projected his thoughts directly into the translation matrix. Perhaps we are being too harsh. The humans do show remarkable tenacity and adaptability. Their exploration vessels have mapped 17 star systems, using nothing but chemical rockets and gravitational assists. Such persistence could be useful in menial roles. Menial roles, scoffed the Hegemony's military advisor, General Krex Prime. Their entire military philosophy is built around what they call combined arms doctrine. They actually coordinate between different weapon systems instead of relying on a single superior technology. It's like watching primitives try to fight with sharp sticks and thrown rocks when they could simply use a disintegrator beam. The Vrexian delegate's antennae twitched with continued amusement. I reviewed their military history, General. They have something they call snipers, individual soldiers who use magnified optical devices to aim their primitive projectile weapons at extreme distances. Can you imagine? Instead of area denial through plasma saturation, they send single soldiers to eliminate targets one at a time. So inefficient. General Krex Prime's databanks whirred as he accessed the relevant files. Ah, yes. I see the reference. Their longest confirmed elimination was achieved by someone designated Deadeye Mackenzie at a range of, let me convert this to standard units, approximately 3.2 kilometers, using a projectile weapon. The time of flight was nearly 4 seconds. The chamber erupted in what passed for laughter among the various species. The concept seemed so absurd that even the normally stoic ethereal collective representatives allowed wisps of amused energy to escape their containment fields. 4 seconds, wheezed the Aquarian delegate. By the deep currents, our targeting computers can eliminate threats across light minutes in microseconds. What possible tactical advantage could such a primitive approach offer? What none of the assembled delegates knew was that at that very moment, The individual they had just mocked was sitting in the cockpit of an unmarked human vessel, the UHSS Longshot, positioned in the asteroid belt of the very system that hosted the Galactic Council. Sergeant First Class Deadeye Mackenzie, recently retired from active military service but recalled for this specific diplomatic mission, was making final adjustments to what appeared to be nothing more than an upgraded version of the same primitive projectile weapon technology the Council was dismissing. The rifle floating in the zero-gravity environment beside him looked unremarkable by galactic standards, essentially a long tube with sophisticated optics, and what the aliens would consider laughably simple chemical propulsion systems. What they couldn't see were the micro-adjustments built into every component, the precisely calculated ammunition, and most importantly, the human behind the weapon. Mackenzie's pale blue eyes, the ones that had earned him his nickname, focused on the scope display. Through a series of gravitational lenses and carefully positioned observation satellites, he could see directly into the council chamber itself. The image was crystal clear despite the impossible distance, over 40 million kilometers from his position to the target. His mission parameters were simple but unprecedented in galactic history. The human delegation needed to make a point about the effectiveness of their primitive weapons technology. They needed to demonstrate that sometimes the oldest solutions were the most elegant ones, and they needed to do it in a way that would be remembered for centuries. Long shot to base. Mackenzie spoke quietly into his comm system. I have visual on the target zone. Atmospheric processors are showing optimal conditions inside the chamber. Gravitational field generators are stable. The response came from Admiral Rodriguez, still sitting in the observation gallery. Copy. Long shot. You are authorized to take the shot when ready. Remember, this isn't about intimidation, it's about precision. Mackenzie smiled, the expression hidden behind his targeting visor. Roger that, Admiral. Precision is what I do. Back in the council chamber, the discussion had moved on to the formal vote. ZX-9 was preparing to call for the standard consensus that would relegate humanity to observer status, essentially making them galactic errand boys for the next century. If there are no objections, ZX-9 announced, we will proceed with classification 7 status for the human species. They may participate in galactic commerce and cultural exchange, but military cooperation will be limited to support roles only. I object. The voice came from the observation gallery, clear and strong despite the vast size of the chamber. Captain Chen had risen from her seat, her dress uniform immaculate, her bearing proud. I formally request demonstration rights under Article 847 of the Galactic Accords. A confused murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. Article 847 was an ancient provision, almost never used, that allowed applicant species to demonstrate their capabilities rather than simply submit to evaluation. Most species considered it a waste of time. Either you had sufficient technology for membership, or you didn't. General Krex Prime's optical sensors focused on Chen with something approaching curiosity. Demonstration rights? Captain Chen, surely you don't intend to embarrass your species further. Your weapons technology has already been thoroughly evaluated. Chen smiled, and there was something in that expression that made several of the alien delegates shift uncomfortably in their various seats, pods, and energy fields. General, I think you'll find that our weapons technology is more sophisticated than your analysis suggests. We'd like to show you something that your instruments might have missed. And what precisely do you intend to demonstrate? Asked the Vrexian delegate, his compound eyes reflecting multiple images of the human captain. Precision, Chen replied simply. We're going to show you what one human with one rifle can do at a distance. Your energy weapons can't even reach. The delegates exchanged glances, chemical signals, and electromagnetic pulses that all conveyed the same sentiment. This was going to be entertaining in the way that watching primitives attempt to use advanced technology was always entertaining. ZX-9 consulted his legal databases. Very well, Captain Chen. Article 847 does permit such demonstrations. However, You should be aware that the demonstration must show capabilities that would justify full military partnership status. A simple display of your existing technology will not be sufficient. Understood, Chen replied, her hand moving to the communication device on her collar. Longshot, you are cleared to demonstrate human precision. Show them what we can do. 40 million kilometers away, Mackenzie had been waiting for those exact words. His breathing slowed to the rhythm he had practiced 10,000 times. His heartbeat steadied. The massive rifle, designed specifically for this moment, aligned with mathematical perfection. The target wasn't anything that would cause damage or harm, that would have violated every diplomatic protocol in the galaxy. Instead, it was a specially prepared demonstration projectile, designed to prove a single point. NTT. That human, primitive technology could reach across distances that the aliens' advanced weapons could not, and do so with a precision that their massive energy projectors could never match. The projectile itself was a work of art. A crystalline structure that would be visible to every sensor in the chamber when it arrived, encoded with data that would prove its origin and the circumstances of its firing. But more than that, it carried a message that would redefine how the galaxy viewed human military capabilities. Mackenzie's finger found the trigger. He had made shots like this 1,000 times in training, but never with stakes this high. The future of human-alien relations, the status of his entire species in galactic politics, and the lives of billions of humans back on Earth, all depended on his ability to do what he had always done. Put the right projectile in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. Time of flight will be approximately 47 minutes, he whispered, more to himself than to anyone listening. Accounting for gravitational drift, stellar wind, and chamber rotation. Target acquisition confirmed. In the council chamber, delegates were settling back to wait for whatever pathetic display the humans were about to provide. None of them noticed the subtle change in Captain Chen's expression, or the way Admiral Rodriguez checked his chronometer with military precision. 47 minutes was an eternity in the context of galactic warfare. The assembled delegates had initially watched their sensor displays with mild interest, then growing confusion, and finally mounting impatience. Their instruments detected nothing. No energy signatures, no projectile traces, no indication that anything was happening at all. Captain Chen, General Krex Prime said, his vocal synthesizer carrying a note of condescending patience. Perhaps your demonstration has encountered technical difficulties? Our sensors detect no weapons fire, no energy discharge, nothing that would indicate any kind of military activity whatsoever. Chen checked her chronometer. 46 minutes, 30 seconds. General, that's because you're looking for the wrong kind of signature. Your sensors are designed to detect energy weapons, plasma discharges, quantum field manipulations. You're not looking for something as simple as a piece of metal traveling through space. The ethereal collective representative pulsed with what might have been curiosity. Metal traveling through space? Captain, debris travels through space constantly. Meteoroids, spacecraft fragments, cosmic dust. Surely you cannot mean to suggest that random space debris constitutes a weapons demonstration. Not random, Admiral Rodriguez interjected from his position in the gallery. Precisely aimed, carefully calculated, and fired from a distance that would be impossible for any of your weapon systems to achieve. The Crystalline Empire delegates' form shifted to display skeptical patterns. Impossible? Captain Chen, our quantum disruptors can eliminate targets across multiple star systems. Our reality manipulation fields can alter the fundamental constants of physics themselves. What could your primitive projectiles possibly accomplish that our advanced weapons cannot? Wei. Chen smiled again. That same unsettling expression that made the aliens uncomfortable, without quite knowing why. Delegate Thornax, can your quantum disruptors hit a target the size of a coin from 40 million kilometers away? Can your reality manipulation fields guarantee that a projectile will arrive at precisely the right place, at precisely the right time, accounting for the rotation of planets, the gravitational pull of stars, and the movement of everything in between? 40 million kilometers? The Aquarian delegate's translation bubble flickered with what her species used to express disbelief. Captain, our long-range sensors can barely detect your homeworld at that distance, much less aim a weapon at it. That's the difference between our approaches to warfare, Rodriguez explained, rising from his seat to address the chamber directly. You rely on overwhelming force, massive energy expenditures, and the ability to destroy everything in a given area. We rely on precision, patience, and putting exactly the right amount of force in exactly the right place. General Krex Prime's databanks whirred as he processed this information. Admiral, even if such a shot were theoretically possible, the time delay would render it tactically useless. By the time your projectile arrived, any target would have moved. Any battlefield would have changed completely. Sometimes, Rodriguez replied, the point isn't to be fast. Sometimes the point is to be inevitable. The word hung in the chamber like a physical presence. Inevitable. It was a concept that didn't translate well into most alien languages. The idea that something could be both distant and unstoppable. Both delayed and certain. ZX-9 was becoming impatient with what he perceived as human grandstanding. Captain Chen, we have been waiting for 46 minutes and 53 seconds. If this demonstration is intended to show us something other than your species' tendency toward dramatic gestures, perhaps you could. He was interrupted by a soft chime from his own sensor array, then another, then a cascade of alerts from every detection system in the chamber, as something registered on instruments that had been silent for the entire demonstration. What is that? Demanded the Vrexian delegate, his compound eyes focusing on his display screen, where a small indicator had appeared, growing larger by the second. That, Chen said quietly, is a single projectile, fired 47 minutes ago from a position in your outer system, traveling at approximately 8 kilometers per second, and aimed with sufficient precision to thread the needle between your orbital defense platforms, your sensor nets, and your patrol fleets, without triggering a single alarm until this moment. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations, translated into dozens of languages and communication methods. Delegates who had been lounging comfortably in their various restraints suddenly sat upright. Their attention focused on sensor displays that showed an impossible sight. A tiny piece of metal, no larger than a human thumb, traveling through space with mathematical precision toward their exact location. Impossible, breathed General Krex Prime, his optical sensors flickering rapidly as he ran calculations. The computational power required to account for all the variables, the gravitational influences, the orbital mechanics. It would require a quantum computer the size of a moon. Rodriguez tapped his temple, where a small neural interface was barely visible beneath his graying hair. General, it requires something much more sophisticated than a quantum computer. It requires a human brain, 40 years of experience, and an understanding of ballistics that goes back to when our ancestors were throwing rocks at animals for dinner. The projectile was now visible on the main chamber displays, a tiny speck of reflected light growing larger with each passing second. But what captured everyone's attention wasn't its approach, it was its trajectory. The thing was moving through space with impossible accuracy, following a path that would bring it directly to the center of the chamber. Security protocols, barked the hegemony's defense coordinator. Activate defensive systems. Belay that order. Chen's voice cut through the chaos with military authority. If you activate your defenses now, you'll prove our point for us. That projectile has been in space for 47 minutes. It passed through your outer sensor perimeter 15 minutes ago. It navigated past 3 defensive satellites and 2 patrol cruisers. If we had wanted to cause damage, don't you think we would have used something larger than a demonstration round? ZX-9's processors were working overtime, trying to understand the implications of what he was witnessing. Captain, are you telling us that this projectile has been flying toward us for nearly an hour, and none of our defensive systems detected it until now? Correct, Chen replied. Your systems are designed to detect energy signatures, large masses, and high-velocity impacts. A small, dense projectile traveling at relatively low speeds doesn't register as a threat until it's close enough that stopping it would require destroying half the chamber. The crystalline Empire delegate's form was now displaying rapid patterns of what could only be described as alarm. But the precision required. The calculations. How did you account for our orbital position? Our rotational velocity? The gravitational influences of our primary star? Our man. Admiral Rodriguez smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, he looked genuinely proud. Delegate Thornax, let me introduce you to the concept of Kentucky windage. The ability to make instinctive adjustments based on experience rather than computation. The man who fired that shot has been making similar calculations since he was 12 years old, hunting deer in the mountains of North America. He's just scaled up. The projectile was now close enough that individual delegates could see it on their personal displays. It wasn't just a random piece of metal. It was clearly manufactured, precisely machined, and carrying some kind of data payload. More disturbing still, it was following a trajectory that would bring it to rest at the exact center of the chamber's speaking platform. 10 seconds to impact, announced the chamber's automated systems. Though impact was perhaps the wrong word for what was about to happen. The Aquarian delegate's voice bubbled with something approaching panic. Should we evacuate? If that thing hits the chamber wall at that velocity, it's not going to hit the chamber wall, Chen said calmly. It's going to stop exactly where it was aimed, with a precision that your energy weapons couldn't match if they were fired from the next room. 5 seconds. The assembled delegates watched in fascination and growing horror as the tiny projectile, traveling at speeds that should have turned it into a destructive meteor, began to slow. Not from air resistance. The chamber was maintained at near-vacuum conditions to accommodate species that didn't breathe atmosphere, but from its own internal mechanisms. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. 1 second. The projectile came to rest with mechanical precision at the exact center of the speaking platform, hovering in the chamber's artificial gravity field, like a period at the end of a sentence. For a moment, the chamber was absolutely silent, as hundreds of the galaxy's most advanced minds tried to process what they had just witnessed. Then, the projectile began to unfold. What had appeared to be a simple metal slug revealed itself to be an intricate piece of engineering. Layers of metamaterials unfolding like a flower, revealing data storage cores, holographic projectors, and a message that began playing immediately in perfect translations for every species present. Greetings, honorable delegates of the Galactic Council. The message began, spoken in the calm, measured tones of Sergeant Mackenzie himself. This projectile was fired from a distance of approximately 40 million kilometers, using technology that your analysis classified as primitive and inefficient. It traveled for 47 minutes through space, navigating past your defensive systems, accounting for gravitational influences you weren't even aware were affecting its trajectory, and arrived at precisely the location and time intended. The message continued as data streams began flowing to every terminal in the chamber. The attached files contain complete ballistic calculations for this shot, including compensation for 17 different gravitational influences, solar wind variations, and the rotational dynamics of this facility. These calculations were performed not by quantum computers, but by a single human being using principles of mathematics and physics that we developed before we ever left our home planet. General Krex Prime was staring at his display in something approaching awe. The data was there. Every calculation, every adjustment, every variable accounted for with a precision that exceeded his own military computers. But more than that, the methodology was elegant in its simplicity. Where alien weapons relied on brute force and overwhelming energy, this approach used patience, precision, and an understanding of natural laws to achieve the impossible. The purpose of this demonstration, Mackenzie's message continued, is not to threaten or intimidate, but to illustrate that effectiveness in warfare is not always about having the biggest weapons or the most advanced technology. Sometimes it's about understanding the fundamentals so thoroughly that you can make the simplest tools perform beyond their theoretical limitations. The ethereal collective representative pulsed with patterns that hadn't been seen in their species for centuries. Genuine respect mixed with a touch of fear. The implications, they whispered through their translation matrix, are staggering. If humans can achieve this level of precision with kinetic weapons, what could they accomplish with our advanced technologies? That, Chen said, stepping down from the observation gallery to the main floor of the chamber, is exactly what we'd like to show you. This demonstration represents human military capability using technology that is, by your standards, thousands of years out of date. Imagine what we could accomplish as full partners in the galactic community. The chamber fell silent again, as delegates contemplated not what humans could do with primitive weapons, but what they might achieve with access to galactic technology, galactic resources, and galactic enemies. The silence stretched across the council chamber, like the void between stars. For nearly 3 minutes, not a single delegate spoke, chirped, hummed, or transmitted. They were all absorbed in the data streaming from Mackenzie's projectile, each mind trying to grasp the full implications of what they had witnessed. Finally, it was General Krex Prime who broke the silence. His mechanical voice carried none of its earlier condescension. Captain Chen, I need to understand something. This level of precision, this ability to account for variables that our computers missed, is this representative of human military capabilities in general? Or is this soldier exceptional, even by your species standards? End quote. Chen exchanged a look with Admiral Rodriguez before answering. General, Sergeant Mackenzie is certainly among our best marksmen, but he's not unique. Human military doctrine has always emphasized individual excellence within coordinated units. We have thousands of snipers with similar capabilities, and they're just one component of our integrated military systems. The Vrexian delegate's antennae twitched nervously. Thousands? You're saying you have thousands of individuals capable of this level of precision? Actually, Rodriguez interjected, moving to stand beside Chen. We have thousands with this level of precision using kinetic weapons. We also have pilots who can navigate asteroid fields at speeds that would liquefy most species. We have engineers who can repair critical systems while under fire. We have tacticians who can coordinate complex operations across multiple theaters simultaneously. What makes humans militarily effective isn't just our technology, it's our people. End quote. Delegate Thornax of the Crystalline Empire had been running calculations since the projectile arrived. His crystalline form flickered with rapid computational patterns before he spoke. Admiral Rodriguez, I've been analyzing the ballistic data from this demonstration. The precision achieved suggests that humans might be capable of tactical applications we never considered, such as, Chen prompted, selective elimination of targets within defended installations without causing collateral damage. Delivery of specialized payloads to specific locations, regardless of defensive countermeasures. Most significantly, your kinetic weapons appear to have one advantage: our energy systems lack entirely. They're completely passive until the moment of impact. The chamber buzzed with renewed discussion as this observation sank in. Energy weapons, for all their power and range, broadcast their position the moment they fired. Quantum disruptors created distinctive signature patterns. Plasma weapons left energy traces that could be tracked back to their source. But a simple projectile, fired from outside sensor range, left no trace of its origin until it was far too late to respond. Zeeks-9's optical sensors were cycling through multiple spectra, analyzing and reanalyzing the demonstration projectile. Captain Chen, I find myself forced to reconsider our initial assessment. However, I must ask, surely this is a specialized application with limited battlefield utility? The time delay, the complex calculations required, the inability to adjust targeting after firing. These seem like significant tactical limitations. Admiral Rodriguez smiled grimly. Ambassador, you're thinking about this backwards. You're assuming that because our weapons take time to reach their targets, They're inferior to your instant effect systems. But consider this. Can your weapons target enemies who don't know they're being targeted? Can your energy projectors eliminate threats without revealing the position of your forces? Can your quantum disruptors operate in environments where energy weapons would be detected immediately? The Aquarian delegate's translation bubble shimmered as she processed this concept. You're suggesting stealth applications. But Admiral, our sensors can detect energy signatures across light years. Surely no military force could remain hidden in modern warfare? Unless, Chen said quietly, they're not using energy signatures that your sensors are designed to detect. Unless they're operating with technology so simple that it falls below your detection thresholds. Unless they're using principles of warfare that predate your civilization's first spaceflight. General Krex Prime was accessing historical databases, his processors working overtime. Captain, are you implying that humans could conduct military operations against galactic civilizations using pre-spaceflight technology? Not entirely, Rodriguez replied. But we're suggesting that human military doctrine incorporates lessons learned over thousands of years of warfare. From stone axes to nuclear weapons, we don't abandon effective techniques just because we develop new technologies. We integrate them. The ethereal collective representative pulsed with complex patterns. This integration concept, it is foreign to our understanding. Most civilizations develop superior technologies and discard inferior ones. You're suggesting humans continue to use primitive methods alongside advanced ones? Exactly, Chen confirmed. General Krex Prime, your forces probably have standard responses to quantum disruptors, plasma weapons, and reality manipulation fields. Do you have standard responses to a human soldier with a rifle, operating from a concealed position, eliminating targets one at a time over the course of hours or days? The chamber fell silent again as military leaders among the delegates realized they didn't. Their defensive doctrines were built around countering the weapons technologies they understood. They had shields for energy weapons, countermeasures for quantum effects, detection systems for advanced propulsion. But a human being crawling through undergrowth with a chemical propulsion weapon fell outside their defensive paradigms entirely. Thornax's crystalline form was now displaying rapid calculation patterns. The implications extend beyond individual combat, don't they? If human soldiers can operate below our technological detection thresholds, if human weapons can penetrate defenses designed for energy-based attacks, if human tactics incorporate pre-technological warfare principles, then humans represent a military wildcard that doesn't fit into established galactic warfare doctrine, Rodriguez finished. We're not necessarily better than your forces, Ambassador, but we're different enough that your standard tactics might not work against us. The hegemony's military coordinator had been silent throughout most of the demonstration. But now, he spoke up. This is all theoretical, of course. Captain Chen, surely you don't expect us to believe that primitive kinetic weapons and pre-spaceflight tactics could compete against modern galactic militaries? Chen's smile was sharp enough to cut through the chamber's recycled atmosphere. Coordinator. That projectile, that just demonstrated impossible precision, it was fired by one man, with one rifle from 40 million kilometers away. Now imagine what 100 men with 100 rifles could accomplish from concealed positions throughout this system. Imagine what 1,000 could do. Or 10,000. But our sensors, the coordinator began, are designed to detect threats, you understand. Rodriguez interrupted. Coordinator, 3 months ago, we conducted a war game exercise with the Rigel Defense Force. They were told that human forces would attempt to infiltrate and capture their primary command facility. They had advance warning, full sensor coverage, and energy shields that could deflect any known weapon. The coordinator's interest was clearly piqued despite himself. And the results? 12 human soldiers penetrated their defenses using technology from our pre-spaceflight era. Crossbows, climbing equipment, and chemical explosives. They captured the facility without triggering a single alarm. The Regalians never even knew they were under attack until human soldiers appeared in their command center. A shocked murmur ran through the chamber. The Rigel Defense Force was considered one of the most advanced military organizations in known space. The idea that primitive weapons and tactics could defeat them was almost incomprehensible. The Vrexian delegates' compound eyes were reflecting multiple images of concern. Admiral, surely this was an artificial scenario. In real combat, Chen interrupted. Advantages often go to forces that can operate outside enemy expectations. General Krex Prime, your military probably trains against energy weapons, exotic matter manipulation, and quantum field effects. Do you train against arrows? Arrows? The general's voice carried a note of disbelief. Captain, arrows are projectiles propelled by mechanical energy storage. They're completely obsolete. Tell that to the Centaurian patrol that encountered our reconnaissance team last year, Rodriguez said grimly. Silent weapons, no energy signature, no detection possible until impact. 3 Centaurian soldiers eliminated from 2 kilometers away before they even knew they were being hunted. Zix-9 was rapidly accessing diplomatic databases. Admiral, the Centaurian incident report listed the cause of death as unknown projectile weapons. You're saying humans were responsible? We're saying humans were testing compatibility between our operational methods and current galactic defensive systems, Chen corrected. The results were illuminating. 2-3, 2-3, 2-3. The chamber was no longer buzzing with amused conversation. The assembled delegates were beginning to understand that they might have fundamentally misunderstood human military capabilities. What they had dismissed as primitive was revealing itself to be sophisticated in ways they hadn't considered. General Krex Prime's optical sensors were cycling rapidly through analytical modes. I need to ask directly, what are human intentions regarding galactic military affairs? This demonstration suggests capabilities that could be used for conquest as easily as defense. Chen's expression became serious, losing the edge of humor that had characterized her earlier responses. General, humans have no interest in conquering the galaxy. We're explorers, not conquerors. We want to learn, to grow, to become part of the galactic community. But we also want that membership to be based on honest assessment of our capabilities, not condescending dismissal of our methods. And if galactic civilization found itself threatened by forces that conventional weapons couldn't touch? Asked the ethereal collective representative. If we needed military assistance against enemies that operated outside standard technological parameters? Admiral Rodriguez stepped forward, his bearing suddenly formal and military. Then you would find humans to be valuable allies. We've been fighting unconventional wars for longer than most of your species have had spaceflight. We understand that sometimes the best solution to a complex problem is a simple one, applied with sufficient skill and determination. The demonstration projectile, still hovering at the center of the chamber, began its final sequence. The holographic display shifted to show star charts, tactical assessments, and most significantly, offers of cooperation rather than demands for recognition. The choice, Chen said as the data streams concluded, is yours, honorable delegates. You can continue to view humans as primitive support personnel, useful for manual labor and basic exploration, or you can recognize us as potential partners with unique capabilities that complement your advanced technologies. Either way, we'll continue to be exactly what we've always been, human. Zix-9 looked around the chamber, noting the changed expressions on every face, sensor array, and energy pattern among the delegates. The vote that had seemed like a formality an hour ago was now anything but certain. I call for a recess, he announced. The council will reconvene in 6 hours to vote on human membership status. Given today's demonstration, I suspect we all have some recalculating to do. As delegates filed out in various forms of shock, confusion, and thoughtful silence, Captain Chen activated her comlink. Long shot. This is base. Outstanding work, Sergeant. Come home. 40 million kilometers away, Deadeye Mackenzie was already packing his rifle, a satisfied smile on his weathered face. Sometimes, the old ways really were the best ways. The galaxy would never underestimate human arms again. The shot was already on its way,